But one of the guys that get a lot of the credit is Steve Blackman from Muscular Development. I mean, those guys have done an extraordinary job for years and years and years to promote health, to promote fitness, to promote strength, to promote bodybuilding, powerlifting, weightlifting, and all of those kind of things. So the contributions they made is gigantic, and I hail them for that.
Arnold, the day after your show at the Victory Seminar, you delivered one of the most significant messages to the IFBB officials ever made in the history of the sport. You challenged them to stop rewarding bloated stomachs and ugly bodies. Obviously, Physiques have been showing these characteristics for quite a few years now. How long had you been thinking about making such a direct statement about it in a public way, the way you did?
Well, to be honest with you, that I have been so occupied with the growth of the sport and with trying to figure out ways of, making bodybuilding kind of together with many other sports. So it is kind of like, so that people really see bodybuilding as a sport. So, that's why we are so keen on presenting the sport of bodybuilding, with archery and with the strongman competition, with weightlifting and with boxing and with judo and karate and, all of those different sports. So that we kind of get conditioned that bodybuilding is one of many sports. And that will also help then eventually to get Olympic recognition. We're now in the Pan American Games and the Asian Games and European Games and all those kind of things. So I've been occupied with that and with that thought and with that vision that I didn't pay as much attention to the actual judging of the bodybuilding competitions, because I always felt kind of like this is an IFBB thing, or this is the National Physique Committee thing, and a Gymanian thing, and all of that. So I just didn't pay any attention to who was judging and what were the criteria and any of that. So I was just kind of enjoying always watching them compete, and then watch them do their pose off, and then the evening show and all that. But then eventually it became more and more clear to me that, wait a minute, we're getting more and more away from the ideal physique and from that V-shaped body that we always have been idolizing, wide shoulders, small waist, big thighs, big calves, and it's kind of like the Greek ideal of, where you have kind of like I always talked about, to make a cross across the body, an X, I should say, and you have the deltoid be the top of the X, and the calves be on the bottom of the X, and the smallest part in the middle is kind of where the abs are, this X. And so that was always kind of the idea. So when you see from far away on the beach a bodybuilding champion, you just see kind of like this delts popping out in calves and the skinny waist. And then that's it. And so then I just felt that, that Steve Reeves logo, that Frank Zane logo, Bob Harris logo, whatever those bodybuilders were called in the older days, I felt kind of like we're going away from that. And now the bodybuilders appear much more blocky on stage. And so I started looking into it more and more. And why is that? I started talking to the judges. I said, what are you looking for? And all this. And more the judges said, well, the day the way the judging procedure is set up and the rules are set up, it lends itself for us to look for the biggest guy. Because today we're only judging muscles. So remember that we have gotten rid of the posing category many years ago. And this is really the first time where I really started paying attention to that and saying, wait a minute, why did we get rid of the posing? Well, the bodybuilders didn't like it. So I said, well, do I give a fuck what the bodybuilders like? I mean, it's like going to a gymnastics event and saying, hey, dear gymnast, do you like this particular discipline? If you don't like it, we cut it out. Well, how stupid is that? So I said to myself, there's something off right there. So then I had meetings with Jim Mannion, and I have meetings with Jim Lorimer and with Rafael Santoya, and with all the different people. And like I said again, we talked to a lot of judges, and it became clear that there was a huge mistake made, many years ago when they took the discipline of posing out of the judging procedure. And I don't know how this slipped by me. I take blame for that partially because it shouldn't have slipped by me. But like I said, I was so occupied with the promotion of the sport and to make the sport big and the event big that I didn't pay much attention and never did with the judges because I always felt like uncomfortable getting involved with the judging in the first place because I'm always concerned about the conflict of interest, as a promoter to also be kind of involved with the judging. Right. But now I got involved, and now I say to myself, we got to go and really put an end to that. And the way, I say to myself, the way to do it is really to speak out, because I'm sure that no one is there to speak out against Jim Mannion, and no one is there to speak out against Raphael, and no one is there to speak out, against Bob Lorimer or Jim Lorimer or any of those high-level people. Right. So, I felt like if I go and speak out about it, then other people would say, I thought about that too. Let's do something about that. And then we can create a kind of a momentum. And that's exactly what has happened that day when I talked about it. I wanted to be as eloquent as I could be and without really, putting anyone down that was on stage, but to just say, look, there were certain people like X, Y, and Z that I thought could have done better under the normal judging procedure, but you guys have taken out the posing, and therefore these guys couldn't be doing better because they're not being judged on their posing. They're not even being judged on their symmetry. They're just being judged on their muscle size and mass. Yeah. And so that's now where we want to go and start slowly moving over back to the old traditional way again.
Arnold, when did you see the shift sort of happen where it used to be about mass was just part of it, but it was about shape and structure and beauty and aesthetics? When did you see things starting to go over toward just the biggest body on stage?
Well, I think that Lee Haney, I thought, was kind of the last of the ideal bodies. And then there is, of course, many like Dexter Jackson, and so, I still have also the ideal body. I mean, there's a lot of guys, but I'm just, you see sometimes guys that win and that you feel like, how did this guy win? I mean, yes, he was incredible, but, how can anyone win with his stomach sticking out? How can anyone win with not being able to do a vacuum? How can anyone win when you don't have the proportions right? You maybe have the biggest muscle mass. And I felt like this guy was kind of shaking when he was posing. I didn't see this guy holding a pose long enough that I could even see. As an expert, I couldn't even see enough in order to judge it accurately. If I would be a judge, I would just say as a judge, hold the pose until I say, thank you. And now I see those guys being asked, and they move around, and they say side chest pose, and all of a sudden you see them moving around and not really staying with the side chest pose because the stomach immediately starts sticking out, and they can't do a vacuum even to really show you their rib cage like in the old days. So I said, well, how can this guy be a champion when he cannot hold the pose? How can this guy be a champion when I haven't even seen a good routine? Yes, he has the best body, the most muscular body, but he hasn't really been able to display it. I mean, you can have the best painting in the world. If you don't put it in the right frame, and if you don't have the right lighting on it, you're not going to have a great show. So displaying, it's like, as in real estate, it's always, it's location, location, location. It's presentation, presentation, presentation is the most important thing in bodybuilding. You got to go and show, what you got in a very dynamic and interesting way. And I feel that it has never, ever in the history of bodybuilding have bodybuilders had to walk around on stage and continuously urge the people, urge the fans, the fanatics out there to give them some applause. Right. Some applause. Not even a lot of applause. some applause because a lot of them are having this 22, 23-inch arms and they're hitting their shots and no one is clapping.
Right.
But why not? Tell me
Boring.
why not? Is it because they're so fantastic? So if you have to beg the audience to clap, how can you be a champion?
Yeah.
Muhammad Ali never had to go and ask the people to clap for him.
Well, it's interesting when you watch Pumping Iron.
Sergio Oliva never had to ask to clap for him. Franco never had to ask anyone and say, wait a minute, I don't hear anything out there. There was even always a standing ovation with those guys.
Right.
So why are they having this problem today and they cannot get any applause? Because there is no drama. We don't have anymore the kind of excitement on stage.
Yeah.
Because it's the routine that they have. Every single guy that comes out does a double bicep pose, and the lat spread, and the side chest, and the tricep pose, and the back pose, and then, and they go like, clumsily from one to the next. And they cannot even hold it. So that is, to me, so the idea is instead of knocking anybody, this is the important thing with the writing, is do not knock people, but to say we would be able to get better performances, more drama on the stage, and better bodies when we force those guys, because of giving points for posing, we force those guys that they also have to practice besides their routine, practice besides their standard poses and their bodybuilding exercises, they also have to practice their routines. And I remember that when we used to practice our routines after working out, we were sweating much more when we did that than during the training. Because it was so strenuous. It is so difficult to be able to flex your calves and simultaneously your thighs and your leg bicep, your buttocks, and your lower back, and your whole back, your deltoids, your biceps, your triceps, your forearms, and then have a smile at the same time. And to stand there like a statue, no shaking. Then slowly, gracefully move to the next pose. And that is very, very difficult and very challenging to do. And that's why they hate it. That's why they don't want to have it as one of the rounds. Right. Because, God forbid, they will have to work for their money. So that is what I'm objecting to, and this is why I say that we must add again the round, and everyone knows it. And there is some resistance on Jim Mannion's part, I feel, even though Jim Mannion was very gracious and said, well, let's start out with the Arnold Classic event and include it there this year, from this year on, during the judging procedure. So we had a great meeting, and we all agreed that to come, and as you know, with all those things, it's always compromise, right? Yeah. It's like in politics. Everyone has different opinions, and then you compromise, so everyone gets kind of their way, in a way. And that's how you move things forward. So we compromised, and we said, okay, let's start with the Arnold Classics this year, and then if that all goes well, and I know the bodybuilders will hate it, and they would say, well, the right guy didn't win, that this guy didn't have the best body, and how do you really judge it? What is if someone is a fantastic poser, but doesn't really have the best body, and one has the most fantastic body, but is a lousy poser? So who would then get the title? Right. Well, that is up to the points. Because if you get 20 points for your physique, let's say, and then you get 18 points for your posing, and then someone else gets 20 points for posing and 19 points for the physique and has a lesser physique, he can win against the other guy. So it's all about the points. It depends on how, it's just like in gymnastics, where you can add up the various different rounds.
Okay.
And this is the way it is. So a guy that is a dynamic poser and has a great body can beat the guy that has a fantastic body but is not that good of a poser. And also what would be judged is very carefully in this routine is the stomach. It's the V-shaped body.
Arnold, the guts are a big deal. How do we, these guys already have guts. Do you think it's something that can be reversed? Some of these guys can get their midsection smaller?
It is, let me ask you something.
Yeah.
The only way you can do anything is if you practice. If you want to be a good public speaker, you got to be able to do many, many reps and repeat your speech over and over so you feel so comfortable so when you go out, you just with no problems can have your audience in your hands like putty and play with them. It's all reps, right? And the same is also the case when you do a high wire balancing act and you want to go from one building to the next to the high wire. What do you think, how many times those guys practice that? Without a safety net underneath. And what do you think how much this little girl that is playing at the opera somewhere on the piano with the age of 7, what do you think how many hours she spent practicing and working on the piano? I have had those girls in various different events of mine, and a lot of them say it was between 4 and 6 hours a day. So if someone is willing to practice between 4 and 6 hours a day the piano to be the best, then why would the bodybuilder not be able to practice? It's 4 hours of working out or 3 hours of working out and then add another hour to the posing. And now it gets to the point that you're asking about, and there's the vacuum. The vacuum you can only do if you send a signal to the brain that your stomach can in fact be pulled in underneath the rib cage. But if you don't practice that, if you don't sit down and you hold your breath and you breathe out and then you pull your stomach in and you hold it like that for seconds at a time, and then for 10 seconds, and then for 20 seconds, and then for 30 seconds, and then you do it with standing up, and you practice, and then you do it while posing with the vacuum, and you have someone there like we did. When I did my pose, my lat spread, Frank Zane will call out and say, "What happened with the vacuum?" I don't see a vacuum. I said, "Well, I'm out of breath. I can't hold it anymore." He says, "What do I give a shit?" Frank Zane would say, he says, "I don't see a vacuum. I'm a judge right now. And I don't see a vacuum." And Frank would say, "What about the thighs?" Arnold forgot to flex his thighs. And Frank would be laughing on the side, and then I would be flexing my thighs. And then I would be turning around and he says, "I don't see the lower striation of the lower back. And I see from the side your stomach sticking out." And so this is how they will criticize, and this is how we were kind of telling each other, to hold the pose and to practice. I mean, this is what you need to do. Every single day we did that. And then when I went home, I sat down, at any given time and just held my stomach in, because you got to train the brain so it becomes second nature. It's like me swinging the sword in the Conan movie. I cannot think. When I draw the sword, I cannot think about looking down, seeing where my sword is so I can draw it. It has to be second nature. How does it become second nature? That without ever looking, I draw my sword in a swift move and I'm ready for the attack, is by doing it 1,000 times over and over again. How do I go and drive with the motorcycle with one hand and then pull out the gun, the shotgun, cock it and shoot through the lock in front of me, drive through the gate? This is only when you do it 1,000 times. You cannot do that just when someone says, "Okay, I'm going to drive with the motorcycle through this gate and shoot the lock out and pull the gun and cock the gun." It's never going to. You probably crash with a motorcycle if you try to do it the first time. So it's all about reps. And so my point is that the bodybuilders have to practice to do the vacuum. They have to practice to keep their waist in. They have to practice to smile and to look friendly and to look like a champion rather than, "Oh my God, I'm going to die in 3 more minutes." Because that's what a lot of them look like on stage.
Yeah.
Totally wiped out of breath, and totally finished. And to me, I think the guy that emerges and that can then smile and can have a great routine and can really show a straight 10 in a posing routine and get his 20 points, that guy has a great shot of winning.
Yeah.
You know, so that is exactly where we want to go with this whole thing, so we get back again to kind of a great body where we don't avoid just the lumps, the huge lumps. Because right now we see it getting bigger and bigger, you know, because of the various different things that people take and all that, but I don't see the performance improving.
Right. Well, a little more your shows anyway.
Performance improvement. It's like a UFC fight. You go into the octagon, you can be a big guy that will help you with when you start getting into the wrestling thing and all that, but you got to be able to perform no matter how big you are. You got to be able to perform. You got to be able to stand up to 3 rounds, 5 minutes each. Otherwise, you're out. You get taken out if you get out of breath quickly. You know, it's the same in bodybuilding.
What do you think about the emphasis on extreme condition today? Like, you know, Cedric McMillan has a fantastic physique, but the knock on him is that he's just never sharp enough. His glutes are never dry enough. Or that's such a thing now that you can't win a show most of the time unless you're in this extreme condition. Do you think that there's too much emphasis on it, or do you think that's just where the sport had to have progressed and evolved to?
Well, I think that, you know, again, without mentioning any names, because I don't know who has good condition and who doesn't, but I mean, I believe very strongly that you have to be in really great condition, cardiovascularly, and also with your strength and with your muscles in order to really pull it off and to win a big championship like that. I don't think that you will be able to go through this posing up there on stage and to feel as comfortable with it in the last minutes before they announce the winner than in the beginning if you're not in really great shape. And this is why I think cardiovascular training and really training fast sometimes, and not just with one set at a time, but to do 6 sets in a row and all that, to kind of really group it together and to let the blood flow from one part of the body to the other, and then right after that to pose in order. It creates, you know, kind of an interesting and a different physique that is chiseled and that is really in shape, and that also looks like, oh, this body can really do things.
Yeah.
And, you know, and like I said, I mean, we have seen great champions, you know, up there on stage, like Dexter Jackson is one of them that has shown over and over again, and there's others that Ronnie Coleman, he was, and lately even a little bit, I think, got also huge lumpy and stuff. But anyway, we don't even have to talk about that.
Right.
But, you know, there are great bodybuilders out there that really have it, and then there's some of them that don't, but I think the judges make the mistake to reward sometimes the wrong guys, and sometimes not the wrong guys, because that's the way the judging procedure is. So it's the right guy, but that's why we have to change the judging procedure so that the right guys are really up there and what should be our ideal of a body.
So, do you think too much emphasis is put on, you know, striated glutes? This is one thing. Like when a guy can look, say Cedric is a really great example. From the front, he looks flawless. He turns around, and the one thing people will say is Dexter's glutes were sharper than Cedric's. Cedric's glutes were a little bit soft, so he can't win. He can't win the Arnold Classic, or he can't win the Mr. Olympia. Do you think that there's too much emphasis put on striated glutes and just that extreme lean condition? They want the guys now to be so lean.
I mean, look, I think that if they don't want someone to win, you know, it's always easy to figure out a way of then having pointing out a certain weak point.
Yeah.
It's just as simple as that. Look, you can put Sergio and me together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can go and say, okay, today I want Arnold to win. So then they would say, how can I cannot let Sergio win because he didn't have any peak on his biceps.
Right.
Right? So you can go say, there's no way that I can vote for any guy that doesn't have a peak on his bicep. And then someone, the next time you go to the next contest and they want to have Sergio win. And it would say, you know, there was just no way that I could have Arnold win. His thighs were not as big as Sergio's. And I mean, you got to have huge thighs. And this is the only way I can let him win. And therefore, I could never vote for Arnold. Mm-hmm. So you can twist it any way you want. That's why you have, you know, 9 judges, and you go and take the best, the worst vote away. That's the way it should be. I think all this, you know, having, I think, how many judges do they have now?
7.
No, but there's 7 that they count, but they have like
I think it's 9 altogether.
9, 11 or something, or even more. But because now they're cutting out like 6 of the best or the worst votes, 3 of the worst votes, and 3 of the best votes, and then they only count 5 judges. So it's some crazy stuff that's going on now. So there's another thing that we want to change, because it should only be 9 judges, and to get the worst vote, you get rid of the worst vote, and to get rid of the best vote, and then 7 judges that you count rather than 5 judges.
Arnold, what do you think about the new division that Jim Manion created called Classic Physique, which is going to have weight limits based on every man's height? It's supposed to be sort of in between physique and bodybuilding. You been following that at all?
Yeah, I have, and I think we just have to watch it. It's so new. I have to see how popular that is, and if that makes a lot of guys enter the competition. I don't know the weight. I'm not so sure yet about the weight. It's I think 212, right, or something like that.
No, for Classic, it's for every man, every height there's a different weight cap. Like for a man who's only 5'8", he can only weigh a maximum in the pros of 190, and it goes up a little bit for each inch of height. So it's limiting people. It's trying to make sure you're not trying to be too big and blocky.
Yeah, it's more about being ripped and stuff. I have to just watch it and see, where that takes us and how that is. But I think, I think that Manion is trying hard to have it, to do both, to have like the monsters and to have the classical physique. Yeah. Again, this is kind of like a part of the compromise. And one has to see if this works or not, but I would say in the meantime, I think that if we want to really make our sport popular, we have to show more drama on the stage. We have to show, better physiques on the stage and physiques that perform better on the stage, that can hold the poses longer, that, kind of more, faces that look relaxed and not all cramped up and all of that. I think because no matter how much you call it a sport, but it is also a sport that deals with beauty, and it is no different than when you go board jumping in the water in the Olympics, when the beauty of the movements and your posture and everything is being judged. And this is the same in this one here. You do get judged with your face, for your face, and for the way you present yourself and how confident you look, and all that is all part of it.
Cool. So with all these changes, it's feasible that within a year or two, posing is going to be judged at all pro contests. The guys will be working on their aesthetics a little bit more and their vacuums and all that. Are there any other changes that you have in the back of your head?
No, I think
any ways to improve?
The thing is that we go and have, the most spectacular posing routine with the most spectacular physique and the most ripped physique, and with the best vacuum and all that. That all of that is together. That to me makes a champion, and that's I think what we're looking for. And I think it could easily be that the guys that are winning right now the competitions with a little adjustment can pull it off and do it all. It doesn't mean that the current Mr. Olympia or the current, Arnold Classic winner was Dexter Jack. Yeah. He has a great posing routine anyway, in order. But I think that all of the guys that are up on stage, with a little bit, if they're being told, as it look from now on, he will be judged also on posing, they would train their posing. Yeah. But right now, there's no reason for it.
Cool.
So because they will be judged on their posing routine, and then their creativity, and then their proportions and vacuum and all the stuff, and they will be practicing the vacuum, and they will be able to do the vacuum, and they will be, they will be perfect. It's just a matter of, us leading the way, and to get them back again to where we were once when those things were judged.
Right. Excellent. Well, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for, I've been a fan since about 1978 myself. So all the movies, pictures, everything. Thank you very much, sir, for everything you've done.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And see you at the Arnold Classic, and thank you for all the great articles you guys are doing on the Arnold Classic and all the pages that you've dedicated to the Arnold Classic. We all really appreciate that.
Cool. All right, Arnold. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. See you.